This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, January the 21st. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a call to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. All right, let's start off with congratulations to Liam Hickey, one of the absolute finest athletes this province has ever produced. He's, of course, been named a Team Canada participating in the upcoming Paralympics in Cortina, Milano, in Italy. So this is going to be his fourth games. Third as a sledge hockey player, a sledge hockey player. And, of course, he played for Canada in basketball in another Paralympic game. So way to go, Liam Hickey. Love that guy. All right, just a quick note for folks who are reaching out to me and they were unsuccessful trying to get Briar tickets yesterday. They went in a heartbeat. Nobody's surprised. So people ask me if I have any connections to get a Briar ticket. Short answer is no, I don't. I wouldn't know where to turn to get a ticket to the Briar, to be honest with you. Well, a bunch of us went in on a package, so I'm going to get to go to a few draws, but I cannot help with tickets as much as I wish I could. All right, so just a couple of random sports notes, and I picked this one today for a specific reason. On this date, 1989, the great one, Wayne Gretzky, passes Marcel Dion to become the NHL's second all-time scorer. I only picked that one because Dion is one of the most underrated players of all time. When we were kids, he was an absolute superstar, but you hear the conversations about some of the best players ever, and seldom do you ever hear Dion included in that conversation, as great as he was. And watching the Australian Open, of course, the first Grand Slam of tennis, saw this interesting one. On this date, 1990, John McEnroe became the first player ever to be expelled from the Australian Open. Just prior to that season, they implemented this rule about if you had 3 on-court violations, and that could be a variety of things, smacking the ball up into the stands, or smashing your racket against the court, or directing a ball at a line judge or what have you. So he committed his third, and they expelled him from the Open. He didn't even know it was a rule, but he was pretty fiery, I'd say. Yeah. All right. So yesterday and the day before, we were talking about and hearing stories about transport trucks or tractor-trailer involved collisions on the highway. And, of course, can be extremely dangerous circumstances. And a couple of emailers asked me, what is going on? That's a really good question. You know, I think most of the finger-pointing of blame is directed at the driver of the transport truck. It's interesting, though, if you look around the country, some investigations that have taken place. For instance, in Ontario, the Ontario Provincial Police, the OPP, they found that 86% of the crashes involving trucks were caused by non-commercial drivers, generally because of speeding or following too closely, improper passing and lane changes, inattention, and of course impatience. So yeah, there's going to be a variety of reasons as to why it happens, but when there's a transport truck involved, of course it really heightens the potential for serious injury and or death. But I was a little bit surprised because I would have thought the bulk of the blame would indeed lie with the transport truck driver, but apparently that's not the case. Well, at least not in Ontario, where they conducted a pretty comprehensive investigation into it. But it's a fair question that was posed by a couple, and there you go. Plenty of people in the east end of St. John's. I know this is hyper-towny stuff, but with the Dominion grocery store closing down around Kitty Bitty Lake, folks in the walking area are pretty concerned. The closure is going to happen on the 8th of May, and it brings forward a variety of questions about, whether or not Loblaw is going to repurpose this for some other hopeful, helpful action. We have no earthly idea. But it just extends itself into the food inflation question and proximity to healthy, inexpensive options, of which there are very, very few. As grocery shoppers, we know it's painful to go to the grocery store. It's about time. I don't know how much actual control governments can enact on grocery store prices, because there's a variety of complicating factors leading to the increased price. Yes, people can point rightfully to greed, even though grocery store margins are pretty thin, but what can governments actually do here? For the most part, I think Canadians want the government to stay out of things like pricing at a grocery store. But there are certain things that governments do indeed regulate in the world of groceries, and I haven't heard one politician on either side of the aisle talking about trying to act on some of the Canada's Competition Bureau investigation and recommendations. They came out with some pretty basic, albeit key findings. Market concentration is very real. The Big Five control 80% of the market. They talk about restrictive property controls, so real estate covenants. So the rules there, they can block new competitors for opening nearby, so it limits all sorts of choices for the medium or smaller scale grocers to be part of the solution here. There's very little transparency coming from grocery retailers regarding price. If you talk about some of their suppliers, and if we're talking the world of agriculture, they talk about some very key issues regarding climate. They talk about fire and drought and floods and insects, in addition to what we all see with our own two eyes when we go to the grocery store, and this is probably never going to change back, is the whole concept of how we're paying more for less. Just pick an item that was once 500 grams and cost $5 is now 400 grams and it costs $6. So that's going to be virtually impossible to reverse that particular trend. But the Competition Bureau was pretty clear. They say not only concentration for grocery retail shelf space, but also in the world of distribution. The big players, they call the tune. They have huge command or distribution chains. So I just wonder, is any politician actually going to look into this or act on it? All right. Food, prices, beef. We know there's a forecasted increase this year about 4 to 6%, but it gets even worse if you look at things like beef. So we can talk about the China trade agreement in principle that was struck last week by the Prime Minister. And just to remind folks, as it pertains to things like, who does business with China and whether or not we should be doing business with China, here's a list of some of the major trading partners with China and Qatar. The United States, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, the entire G7. Anyway, one of the things that was opened up, not only for canola and seafood and energy, and China's now going to be the biggest importer of oil from this country outside the United States because of the twinning of Trans Mountain, but it's the Canadian Cattle Association announcement that I saw yesterday. So it says, the Canadian Cattle Association welcomes the news that Canadian beef access to China has been restored after being wrongfully shut out in 2021. We'll continue to work with government officials, industry stakeholders to learn about more details, including potential safeguard measures. Here's the question I would have, though, is we've been told that beef prices are directly linked to the very low numbers in the herds of cattle across the country. So, yeah, I'm sure they're quite thrilled to have expanded markets, but what's that going to actually mean for prices here? So if they find a bigger export market, because if we're talking about straight up economics 101 and supply and demand, what's that going to mean for beef prices in this country? Is that 7% forecast going to be 10% into the future? I don't know, but it seems like a strange issue. Like, for instance, canola. Canola prices in this country are not going to change for everyday consumers based on opening up or reopening a market in China, but beef probably will. People already talk about the lack of inspections or grading as it pertains to Mexican or Australian beef that we're seeing more and more on the grocery store coolers. So what's that actually going to translate into the future? I think that's a fair question being posed. Your thoughts? All right, let's see if I can find this. So we've been talking about hospital overcrowding, what it means for ER wait times, emergency care facilities that absolutely can play a pragmatic, positive role in the healthcare system. But when Dr. Scott Wilson, who's an ER doctor down at St. Clair's, he's quite clearly said that it's not necessarily just about staffing at the ERs, it's about hospital overcrowding and beds being occupied where those patients should be elsewhere. Dr. Pat Parfrey, the CEO of NL Health Services, agrees in full. And he's pointing down the road at something that we've been talking about on this show for quite a long time. Not just doctor shortages and nurse shortages or LPNs or NPs or anything else, but we're talking about long-term care. There's a couple of different sides to this. So Dr. Parfrey is looking down the road saying there is going to be a crunch for long-term care without a doubt. You look at the aging demographic, we all know the numbers on that front. Long-term care facilities in this province are at 98% capacity. There's somewhere around 1,400 long-term care beds in the province today. Dr. Parfrey is estimating the need for another 1,800 sooner than later. And remember, we can build a facility. We can buy the Sealy Posturepedic mattress. It's about the staff to associate with that particular bed. So now what? The other side of that coin, and again, this is something that's been creeping right in front of our very eyes. We've all seen it. We've been talking about it for a decade on this program. But it's also the political conversation regarding aging in place, aging at home. Conceptually speaking, it's probably a cost savings to the government if more and more seniors are able to live longer in their own home. It's probably better for many seniors, even though there's probably folks who they think that a long-term care setting is exactly what they need, whether it be to deal with their isolation or their loneliness. But politicians talk a lot about aging in place, but what they don't do is act on it. I mean, the increase of home care support that so many people are looking for themselves or for their mom or dad or their nan or their pop, where are we? You know, it's one thing to talk about it and then to have very meager grants like the Aging Well grant, which is $400 maximum. These are all just baby steps. So again, if we're looking at a forecasted need of an additional 1,800 long-term care beds, while at the same time talking about the need for more and more supports for aging in place, where are those supports? And who's actually working on it? So I think that's, a pretty stark realization by not only Dr. Parfrey and Dr. Wilson and others, because it can't be just about institutionalizing people as a go-to. Fine to talk about it, quite another to act on it. Your thoughts? Okay. Little bit confused on this oil-related story regarding Equinor and the possibility for first oil out of Beta Nord by 2031. So there was what people are calling a crucial milestone for the potential for Beta Nord to come to pass, and they refer to it as Decision Gate 2. The company itself imposed the timeline of December for an announcement to be made on Decision Gate 2 and the progress of the benefits agreement currently being worked on, we're told, by the province and Equinor and their partner. But opposition parties calling for more transparency. It's a fair question insofar as if we understood there was a Decision Gate 2 timeline or deadline for December, and when it was not met, then it would have been simple enough for the province to simply tell us that. Because Equinor is not going to be in the news all the time saying, well, it's our self-imposed timeline or deadline and we need more time. But if it's a very fundamental sharing of information to say, hey, I know the general public who's watching this topic has wondered what happened to the December timeline. Well, Equinor needs more time. That's all. Pretty fundamental statement. And we don't know where we're going on that one, but the benefits agreement and competitiveness. We had Rob Strong on the program yesterday talking about an expression of interest put forward by Equinor regarding what they call a utility module. Pretty substantial piece of infrastructure. The key for opportunities inside of fabrication in this province, we hear from Trades NL, we hear from tradespeople talk about we really need to maximize opportunities for locals. I get that. But even in the expression of interest, even references to components of the benefits agreement insofar as the Canada-Newfoundland Offshore Petroleum Board, it really does boil back down to competitiveness for schedule and cost. Can we actually hit those targets? It's one thing for the company to be encouraged to do it because they have to do it. But just putting it in writing that, the opportunity is open to locals, local companies, the opportunity is open to local skilled tradespeoples, but are we going to be able to hit the cost competitiveness target? It's going to be tricky. Your thoughts? All right, how are we doing out there, Dave? All right, so the Tony Humby case. I mean, all allegations yet to be truly tested in court at this moment in time, facing some very, very serious dark charges, as we all know. The reason I bring it up here this morning is that a few years ago, even though there was long-time suspicion about the actions of Tony Humby and now convicted and incarcerated Bruce Escott, is this one person came forward to file a formal complaint which triggered the swell of further investigation and consequently arrests. More and more of Tony Humby's alleged victims have come forward, as you know. But the person that really was the catalyst to kick off this sequence of events is now dead. So there's vague references to a life of addiction, and it's so bloody sad. And this is a quote directly from the mother. Tony Humby killed him. He didn't put a gun to his head, but if it wasn't for what happened to him, my son would still be alive. Sometimes we talk about these cases just as it pertains to the charges. Sometimes I think we miss the human element. Like exactly what is the current circumstances, what does life look like into the future, whether it be the alleged victims at the hands of the Tony Humbeys of the world or the Mount Cashels of the world. But that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. We'll focus in on the court proceedings, but the aftermath, for what that means for individuals and their families and relationships into the future. The stories are devastating. Tony Humby killed him. So says the mom. He didn't put a gun to his head. But if it wasn't for what happened to him, my son would still be alive. Sometimes we got to really be careful to ensure that we deal with the real life aftermath for the individuals, the human beings. All right, let's keep going. Arctic sovereignty. A lot of questions here. So we need to know exactly the role that Canada and other countries play in the Arctic. At this moment in time, Canada has 8 staff military sites in Canada's Arctic. Largest, of course, is in Yellowknife. There's facilities in Whitehorse, Iqaluit, Inuvik, and then we talk about Ellesmere Island, about 55 people there at this time. We have very thin coverage as a country, to say the least, and we need to do much, much better. We do indeed operate 47 radar sites. That's all part of the North Warning System, but those aren't staffed. Greenland, there's only 3 military bases on the territory. Then you look at who really dominates there. We could talk about Russian presence and that, American presence, but it's Russia. The largest military player in the Arctic is absolutely and definitely Russia. They have got a huge presence, 30 to 40 staff military facilities in the country's north. Then you talk about the presence regarding the dozens of ships and submarines and icebreakers and the like. Norway, which is a very key player in the north as well, and of course shares a land border with Russia, always been very wary of their eastern neighbour, as they would be and should be. They have 15 military facilities across their pretty small Arctic territory, but we're going to have to brace for what is going to be a race for control in the Arctic. A couple more. So, the World Economic Forum. It's a boogeyman in some people's minds, and we can talk about it. Yesterday, Prime Minister Carney gave a speech at Davos at the WEF, and then followed up with a question and answer series. I'll leave it up to you to characterize the speech as you see fit. Couple of things. It's certainly consequential. You know, I think in very clear-eyed manner gave his opinion, and I think very well articulated, about what the reality is insofar as international order goes. People can talk about globalists and New World Order, and if you ask different individuals what they mean by that, you'll get a bunch of different definitions. But it was something else to hear. And I think very well articulated. And people say, you know, it's just too hyper-partisan. I didn't hear any partisanship at all. And, you know, there's other comments about he's trying to position himself as some sort of leader of a superpower, even though consistent and constant references to Canada being a middle power, which we are. And we always have been. And we always will be. So to try to understand about the reality and the subordination to the world's superpowers, and, you know, he used the word hegemony very, very often during the speeches. Some of the large superpowers, if they're not reliable, and people in the country have been saying for a long time, what happens if there's an erosion in relationship with the United States? Well, we're seeing it. So talking about different trade relationships with a variety of countries, some people have some problems with some of the countries that we're trying to do more business with. But it was a very consequential speech. I see it getting reviews that are really quite glowing, and of course people who are simply opposed to the Liberals or the Prime Minister thought it was awful. Not so sure how awful gets attached to it, but what will the ripple effect be with what is already a very tenuous partnership with the Americans? Probably going to have, as I said, the word consequential. It probably will come with consequences. But how can we possibly be afraid of that into the future? You know, we have to deal with what we can. We can only control what we can control. So for the uncontrollable largest trading partners out there, which we do need to have a good, solid relationship with the Americans for a variety of reasons, the economies are very much integrated. But he painted a very stark picture about what the world looks like today and what it's going to look like into the future. And whether or not, in his estimation, there's probably no return to what was once the international rules regarding order and transparency and integration and collaboration and cooperation. Feels like the days are behind us, and that's unbelievable. So People can give me their own definitions of globalist or New World Order or what have you, but the fact of the matter is the world has changed, and dramatically in just the past year, even though it wasn't always going to be a possibility. So there was lots of different lines that drew the attention of people who were watching from around the world. Now, the American president is going to be presenting at Davos as well. It'll be interesting to compare and contrast the tone, the tenor, and the points made by whether it be the Prime Minister or the President. But your thoughts on what you saw there. And, you know, for one party or another, Mr. Poilievre in this case is say he would absolutely not allow members of his party to go to Davos, even though Mr. Poilievre has been there. So has former Prime Minister Stephen Harper many, many times. I don't know how we don't present ourselves on the world stage when the world is a small place. And middle powers absolutely do need to be more united and more collaborative into the future if we have any hope. Now, we have tons of domestic problems that were created by us. Not me, not you, governments. But I don't know how we get away from what was the reality as painted very clearly by the Prime Minister yesterday. Like him or loathe him, he said an awful lot out loud. Some of the quiet parts out loud. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That can only happen if you're in the queue. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 3. Say good morning to the Vice President of Engineering and Energy Supply at Newfoundland Power. That's Byron Chubbs. Hi, Byron. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks very much for having me on.
Happy to have you on the program. Lots to talk about power bills and Newfoundland Power and meter reading. I believe you think there's a lot of misconceptions out there or myths. Where would you like to start before I have some questions for you?
Yes, absolutely. First, I am calling to address some misinformation that's out there publicly. I've seen it on social media. I've seen it on traditional media. We've heard from the Consumer Advocate as well on this, and there's some things that are out there that are simply not factually correct that I want to address. But before I do, I want to be clear here that Newfoundland Power, we recognize that this is a difficult time for customers, and certainly this time of year after Christmas, you're dealing with your Christmas bills, you're dealing with your electricity bills and all other bills at one time. And we understand that costs of living have gone up, including electricity rates. And customers out there, we know that they are struggling to pay their bills, and we have customer representatives that are available to them all day long. If they want to call in and reach out, we have a fantastic team that's there to help out. But another way we want to help our customers is just to be sure that they have the correct information about in particular our meters and our billing system. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to address this morning. First off, there's a notion out there that Newfoundland Power's meters are obsolete. You've probably heard this one yourself.
I have.
On your show. Yeah, and I just got to say, that is a statement that is absolutely not true. The meters Newfoundland Power use, they're not obsolete. They are a proven technology that's highly accurate. We're not the only utility that use these type of meters. They're used in multiple jurisdictions across Canada, used in the U.S. as well. These type of meters actually used to measure water as well in jurisdictions where water is measured as well. So, and they're tested. They're tested to ensure that they properly measure the electricity that we provide to our customers' homes. And in fact, they have to meet standards that are set by Measurement Canada. Measurement Canada being the federal agency that ensures accuracy of goods that are sold. So they're the organization that ensures the gas pumps are measuring accurately as you're pumping gas. If there's a jurisdiction that has water meters, they oversee that, and they oversee electricity meters. And we have to randomly sample and test our meters at an external Measurement Canada accredited facility. So this is a third-party facility. It's not Newfoundland Power that's doing this. This facility selects which meters are tested. We have no control over that. We have to remove these meters from a customer's home, send them to be tested. And the results, Patty, they are consistently 99.9% accurate. We have all the documentation and reports that show that, which is above the threshold that's set by Measurement Canada. And the requirement is that they had to be 97% or above. They're consistently around 99.9%. And I've never seen a meter come back from this testing and actually come in below that threshold. So they're very accurate. The other thing I want to address is that is about smart meters. And we've heard a lot of talk about smart meters in the media lately. And I've heard that Newfoundland Power is refusing to install smart meters.
Before we move on to smart meters, I just have a question about how the meters are read. So it's not that long ago, be standing in the kitchen, you'd see someone with a Newfoundland Power outfit walk down your driveway, go to your backyard and read your meter, write it down on a piece of paper. So I think some of the concerns people have is how the meters are read and whether or not the meter reading technology is calibrated to the same extent that the meters themselves are tested. So walk us through how my meter is actually read without someone going and looking at my meter.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. So prior to about 10 years ago, we used to read meters manually. So someone actually had to come onto your property. They had to walk up. You had to see the meter, see the reading on it, and then manually enter that reading into a device, a handheld device. And then that was brought back and stored into our meter system. That was I'll say, an inefficient way. It was a traditional way, but a very inefficient way to read meters. As you can imagine, having to visit 278,000 customers, so having to visit every single home every single month was not the most efficient way to go about it. Newer meter technology came out there where the meter on your home can now broadcast a signal. And that signal transmits about 2 kilometers, depending on trees and if there's any kind of obstruction in the way. And we now have a device that's in a Newfoundland Power vehicle that can drive into a neighborhood and pick up the readings that's being broadcast from each of those meters all at once. So instead of a meter reader who could pick up about 300 meter readings in a day, now the vehicle that's driving around is picking up that digital signal and reading about 3,000 meters on average in the run of a day. So a much more efficient way to read meters. Also a more safer way to read meters. If you can imagine this time of year going on to every customer's property, slips, trips, and falls. Dog bites was a safety concern for us. As well, and lots of times we couldn't even access the meter. The gate was snowed up, or the pathway was covered up, or the meter was covered, and in those times we had to actually estimate some bills back then. So now that we have this new technology, we're much more efficient at reading the meters. It's done at a much lower cost, and at the same time it's done more safely, and it's also more accurate. So we have fewer estimates. The idea of estimating bills is almost virtually gone away now because of this new technology.
Okay.
Does that help?
I think so, and I'm just trying to let the information flow so that people can make their own determinations about what we're talking about here. So, if we're talking about the level of increase in our power bills, let's just say over the last decade, and this is even before the Muskrat Falls full implications are fully realized here. I know the rate applications go through the PUB and that particular process, but I think in large part, if we're simply just looking at our power bills and the trend upwards, and let's just say the last 10 years, I think people are struggling to understand or to realize exactly why, because we're looking down the road at the Muskrat implications. We know we've got this, whatever people think is rate stabilization monies that runs out in 2030, and then we're in for another sticker shock potentially. So people do wonder exactly what the justification is for the pretty significant increase over the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely, Patty. And I know it's been a challenging time for customers, and we see the same thing that you see. Newfoundland Power, we do have a very strong track record for managing our costs and our portion of the bill over decades period of time. The last 3 years, and I'll say post-COVID, like many sectors, we're seeing a lot of challenges on the supply chain side, the cost of goods and services. On top of that, our infrastructure is aging, so we're replacing our assets, and we had to replace these assets to be able to withstand the weather conditions that we're experiencing out there. And those are additional costs that we're seeing. And then there's also the supply side. So the electricity we sell to our customers, about 70% of the customer's bill is actually the energy that we purchase to sell to customers, and that cost has gone up as well. And so we've seen a lot of cost pressures, and we are a cost of service utility. So the costs that we incur have to get built into customer rates. That's all reviewed through general rate applications and the Public Utilities Board, and the costs are scrutinized very much so. But I'm sure that's not helpful for customers to hear, because I know that they're seeing inflationary pressures as well. If I can just ensure customers that cost efficiency is a big focus at Newfoundland Power. We do focus on keeping costs down as much as we can. And we encourage customers, if they're having trouble paying their bills, to always call us, reach out. We have flexible payment arrangement options. They can call one of our contact center staff, and they're very well trained, very knowledgeable, working with customers to help find a resolution. Okay. And another thing, while I'm on this topic, is our equal payment plan. So we have an equal payment plan that we offer to customers that spreads out those annual electricity costs evenly over 12 months, so that the spikes that you see in the winter months when it's colder and you're using more electricity, that those spikes are flattened out. And so bills become easier to manage, they're more predictable, and I think it's a very useful thing for customers if they're struggling to pay their bills.
Okay, let's dig into smart meters for a minute before we run out of time. So I know Newfoundland Power's argument has been that it's too costly and consequently be more costly for your customers, but is there another reason? Because it seems to be the move for utilities and jurisdictions right across the country. Smart meters seem to be very helpful to the consumer, maybe helpful to the utility, given the fact that I'd be more mindful of peak hours, maybe get to pay less, take some pressure off of the grid when we know demand is at breakfast time, supper time, those types of times of the day. So why not smart meters? Anything beyond cost?
No, actually, it comes right down to cost, and I can assure you, Patty, there's no one in this province who wants smart meters more than I do. We've done a lot of analysis on this, and I can take you back to when we put in our current meter technology, where we assessed it at that time as well. There are a lot of additional benefits to smart meters. They will add new tools for customers. They will help generate more data for customers to make more informed decisions, and they also provide better information to Newfoundland Power and will assist in our own operations. So there's many different benefits that come along with installing smart meters. However, when we study this and we stack up all of those benefits combined, they simply don't overcome the $120 million upfront cost of installing these meters for our customers. And in simpler terms, and the way I like to explain this to people, because I'm asked about it a lot, it would be like asking customers to pay an additional $10 on their bill so they can save $5. Right? It's just not economical at this point. And one more point on that is that smart meters, they follow the same measurement Canada requirements for accuracy as our current meter technology. The internal technology that actually measures the electricity is the same. So although they provide more features, more bells and whistles, and better information for customers, the meters that customers have today are just as accurate as smart meters. Now, will we ever install smart meters? I'm confident that Newfoundland Power will install smart meters on the road. Our current meters, we've had them in place for about 10 years, and the standard life of a meter is about 20 years. So when our current meters reach end of life, about 10 years from now, I think that's when we'll see smart meters come on. And when that happens, I'll be very, very happy to be able to provide those benefits to customers, but in a way that doesn't result in bills going up.
People, like for instance, at Newfoundland Labrador Hydro, there's a lot of control in the hands of government when we talk about the rate of pay and bonuses and the size of the workforce and those types of things. And you'll hear this, especially if you follow along the stories on social media. People will point to what they'll say is greed. $1 million a week in profits at Newfoundland Power. We see some of the salaries that are being shared on social media regarding some of the senior executives at Newfoundland Power, of which we have no control over, given the fact that Fortis is a private company, publicly shared, but a private company. So when people say, well, it's the greed at Newfoundland Power, how do you react to that, Byron?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen all this. I've heard all this on social media, and I've heard it from speaking to people. And when I hear numbers like the $1 million a week, the electricity system in Newfoundland Labrador is very significant. It's a $1.5 billion electricity system. Right, and to operate a system like that and to invest in a system like that, a utility needs to earn a reasonable return on that, right? And that's where that $50 million in annual return comes from. It comes from that $1.5 billion system that is being funded by our investors. So, when $1 million a week seems like a lot, no doubt, when you speak of it in those terms, but when you look at the size of the grid and the amount of investment that it's involved, it's a very reasonable return. And in fact, the return that's allowed in Newfoundland and Labrador for the utility here is actually the lowest return in Atlantic Canada. And on the executive compensation piece, again, this is something that I'm sure is not going to be much too helpful for customers. But the executives in utilities and our team at Newfoundland Power, we're a very small executive team. There's only 4 executives, including our CEO. A very small team. I would say compared to utilities of similar size, you usually see more than that. We have a very broad set of responsibilities, and it's a team that's charged with things like the safety of 650 employees who work on the electricity grid in a very hazardous environment every year. The team that has to make the decisions on long-term planning with keeping the grid reliable, that are responsible for overall service delivery, meeting customers' expectations in the type of storms and weather that we have in this province. So it's a very broad set of responsibilities, and you need quality people who can deliver that. Again, I'm sure this is not a lot of comfort for listeners, Patty, but just maybe one point to make is that the total executive compensation at Newfoundland Power that it's out there, the customers actually don't pay for any bonuses for the executive at Newfoundland Power. This is not in customer rates. It is only just the salaries, no bonuses. And then when you look at executive compensation, it only makes up about 0.2% of a customer's bill. It's a very small, very it's 20 cents on a $100 bill. It's a very small amount, but I know it gets a lot of attention.
I appreciate your time this morning, Byron. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Patty, for having me on.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. It's Byron Chubb, VP Engineering and Energy Supply, Newfoundland Power. Your thoughts? I can offer them during this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Maggie, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty.
Hi there.
I wanted to call back. I mean, I did call in yesterday and get in the queue, but I had to leave unexpectedly. And when I called you Monday, as you know, I was having a meltdown facing eviction. So I wanted to call you back and let you and the callers know that everything's been taken care of and I will not be evicted. And I want to say a big thank you to the people who stepped up to help. I'm not mentioning any names. It's not my place to do so. People want to be anonymous at times. And I want to thank David. He was very helpful, very supportive, as you were. And I want to say I'm very grateful that VOCM exists. That's pretty much it.
Well, Maggie, a lot of this happened off air. We're probably the best when we talk about people coming to your aid, and I'm really glad that it happened. People were quick to get in touch with me, and I know that they were quick to get in touch with you, maybe then quick to get in touch with your landlord, and it sounds like things have been settled. And just if people weren't listening, Maggie was coming up short. She was like some $2,100 in arrears on her rent, and then there was a consideration by her landlord to evict her. You've been there for, I think, a number of years, maybe 8 years, at $800 a month, and you were coming up to hard times and not knowing what might be next. I mean, when we talk about housing and having a safe, familiar roof over our head, it's one of the biggest consequences in our day-to-day lives. So I'm really glad that this worked out the way it did, Maggie, and I hope that the anguish and the worry that you were feeling that day, hopefully that's been tempered, at least for now.
That's gone, yeah, for sure. Like, I have never faced an eviction before in my life, Patty, ever. So I was really, really distraught. As you know, you spoke to me. You had to listen to it. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But I didn't know what else to do. So a neighbor said to me, you listen to VOCM religiously, and I do. I don't always call in, but I do listen all the time. And she said, call VOCM. They can direct you somewhere. What have you got to lose? And I'm so glad I did call.
And I'm glad you did too, and I'm really pleased it worked out the way it did, Maggie. Thank you for your call this morning, and you take good care of yourself.
Thank you very much, Patty. And I want to thank a big, big thank you to the people that helped. You guys know who you are, and I'll be forever grateful. Thank you, and have a great day, Patty.
Same to you, Maggie. Take good care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, there's a different tone in Maggie's voice this morning. She was completely distraught when we spoke, and I understood. I mean, when you're facing the unknowns of where you're going to live, I mean, just consider even just the vacancy rate in and around here. It's virtually impossible for folks, especially when we're trying to hit an affordability target, to try to find a new place to move to. And look, times are tough. People fall into tough situations with being in arrears on their rents and what have you. So, I mean, I get it. And big thanks to everyone who did something big or small to help. Very quickly, I didn't mention, and it was for no real particular purpose, but apparently today is Let's Talk Day. You know, and we try to keep on the front burner issues regarding mental health, mental wellness, mental illness, access to treatments and supports. So, yeah, we're happy to share those stories, not just today, but every day. So someone's wondering why we didn't paint some sort of clearer picture about the fact that it is Let's Talk Day. I mean, it's a corporate marketing ploy as much as it is a pragmatic conversation. So, you know me, we're happy to have those discussions here on the program. Let's see, we try to get back on track with the breaks. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's see here. Let's go to line number 4. So good morning to the Liberal member for Placentia St. Mary's. That's Sherry Gambin-Walsh. Good morning, Sherry. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Good morning.
Welcome to the program.
Yes, I wanted to call this morning and talk about the Atlantic Seafood Sauce Company and just kind of give a timeline so the public have an understanding of what really happened here and what's going on. So this company was built early 1990s, and the objective was to produce fish sauce from leftover cake and another small fish. Now, the idea was promising, but this operation ran into problems fairly quickly. They had their own legal battles. They went to court with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and they actually won in court. But what happened in court, I believe they had an appeal and won in court. But the legal grounds and what happened in court was that their market then would be they could only sell to Newfoundland. So the market was too small. So by 2006, the company closed their doors. The PC government were in from 2006 to 2015, and I inherited this file in 2015. And as I said, the property was privately owned. I worked with the municipality of St. Mary's to arrive at a point where they took ownership of the property. And then government allocated towards $2 million to removing the fish sauce from the plant. In 2015, when I was first elected, the biggest issue in the area was roads. But by late 2017, the odor was becoming a huge issue for the people. So I started to work with the then Deputy Mayor, now Mayor, Steve Ryan. There were 3 liens against the property. They had to be lifted. At one point, a company actually came in. The council actually had a company come in. They started the cleanup, but DFO arrived on the scene and poured concrete in the drain holes and took samples. And we didn't know they took samples at that time. After that, we worked with the town, so the town took ownership of the property themselves, because that was the only way that the provincial government could help the town. So the town had to go through a process of hiring a consultant to assess the cleanup, and our government allocated $230,000 for them to do that. We needed to know if this area was safe, if it was a safe environment to work in, and where this material could actually be moved to. It was determined at that time that the vats that held the sauce could not be moved because there was a risk of them falling apart. So multiple provincial government departments were engaged, trying to determine how this private property that are co-funded by the Progressive Conservative federal government and Progressive Conservative provincial government could be dealt with legally. It was the taxpayers' money to put it there, and the biggest question was who was responsible for the most difficult one to navigate was who was responsible for this billing. So finally, it was determined that the provincial government, that they could cost share with the federal government to remove the sauce. Then the federal government were trying to determine what department was responsible. The province and the municipal government advocated the federal government for funding. In late 2022, the province confirmed that the material could potentially go to the Sunnyside waste site. In August of 2022, Sunnyside requested a certificate of authority from the pollution prevention stating that they could take the material. We went through the process of how to navigate this. The Department of Digital Government Service now and Environment and Climate Change confirmed that Sunnyside could take the material. Now, the town of St. Mary's needed someone to move the material if Sunnyside agreed to take it. However, even to this date, Sunnyside has not agreed to accept the material. So there was a meeting with the MP in September of 2022 about funding. He was also advocating different departments in the federal government to try to arrive at a cost-sharing model. As the MHA, I continued my advocacy for funding to the provincial government with the municipal government and trying to find a way, a department somehow to fund the removal of this sauce. So the advocacy worked off, and the file did get addressed. In budget 2025, the provincial government allocated $1.5 million to remove the sauce from the building, and there was access to up to an additional $500,000 for a total of $2 million. We'd already allocated $230,000. So at this point, the property was owned by the town, so they would be the proponent of the tender to move the material, and then I went to an election. Now, I remember back in 2017 when this became an issue for the residents of St. Mary's on a Friday evening. I said to the mayor, Thursday, I said to the mayor, do you have anything out there? Do you have any files? Go in and uncover everything you got. So he put everything together, and by Friday evening, he arrived on my doorstep with a binder that was about 12 inches thick. And so that evening, I sat down with that binder, and we tried to work a plan out how we would address that, And that's how we arrived at it over, 10 years.
I understand the historical timeline, and I think it's helpful for the conversation. But ultimately, if we all stand back and have a look here, the town of St. Mary's was never going to be equipped, financially speaking, to take on this task of removing that fish sauce, the product itself, tearing down that dilapidated building. This was always going to need different levels of government, and specifically the provincial government. I mean, everyone knew, we could all see what was coming here. We can give money to the town of St. Mary's to go off to tender and those types of things. But at the end of the day, if the province wasn't going to be financially involved, if not financially responsible, this was going to be the end result. The wind was going to tear the side out of it, and the stuff was going to start pouring into the bay again.
Yes, you're correct. We knew that, but we had to arrive at a way that this was a private operator. You can't be letting private businesses off the hook with this stuff. I mean, the environmental laws have changed. There's environmental mediation. There's environmental process assessments. There's regulations have improved. There's been a lot of changes in environment since 1990. So if there's any business out there that thinks that they can do this today, they can't. Government will be coming after you because the regulations are now there, whether the companies declare bankruptcy or not. But they weren't there in the 1990s. And it was not fair to the people of St. Mary's for this to be left on their doorsteps. I mean, the odor is ridiculous. It's wicked. To the point I remember some days the mayor would call me and say, Sherry, I think we're going to have to close the school. The kids they can't go out on the playground. They can't do this. Businesses there are being affected. It's bad when the wind turns a certain way. And it's not fair to the people of St. Mary's that they be left with this. So the provincial government had to come up with a way to figure out how we could help the people of St. Mary's get this sauce out of there. And there was legalities involved. It was a private owner. There were liens on the building. The departments didn't know who was going to be responsible. To this day, the federal government hasn't come forward with any money. So, but the money is there. It was allocated in budget in 2025, and I need the PC government now to take this over the finish line. I tried to reach out to Minister Tibbs. I contacted him by text. He didn't respond. Unlike his colleagues, Minister Pedden and Minister Wall, whenever we reach out to them for something that's urgent for the people of the province, they respond. But nothing from Minister Tibbs yet. However, I do know from talking to the council that Minister Tibbs is consulting with the council, and I'm happy. I'm delighted. I'm really happy that he went down, and him and his staff, and they visited the site, and they saw what we've been dealing with, and I'm happy that they're willing to secure the building, and they're going to deal with this. And I mean, if this is not dealt with by the time we get into the House of Assembly, I am going to be relentless. You will hear from me again. Because, I mean, I worked 8 years with this town to arrive at this point. This needs to be removed from that community.
I don't think we're going to be able to force feed a community to take this waste and deal with it. And I don't even know what the process would be there. So is anybody working on alternative plans? Because Sunnyside or elsewhere, I don't think the province has the authority, nor should they have. Hey, you're doing what we tell you to do on this front. You have to accept this toxic waste or this rotting fish sauce. So is there any plan B here?
Well, the plan was in place. The $1.5 million was allocated in budget 2025. The town was going to tender when I left to go to an election. I know they have people that are interested in assisting them remove it. The issue here now is where are they going to bring it to? Because to my understanding is that Sunnyside has not accepted it yet. So my understanding now is that the provincial PC government are trying to navigate where this material is going to. So I think the question for Minister Tibbs is, when are you going to remove this material and where are you bringing it? Simple.
Pretty much.
Food. It was a food. It was a food product, right? It was a food product that this company, when they went to court, they won and were allowed to sell this on the market in Newfoundland. But it fermented over years and years and years, and it's just got an odor that'll knock you down.
I've been there. You can taste the smell, and that's not a good thing. Sherry, I appreciate your time. I got to get to the news.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's get that news break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Walter, you're on the air.
Very good morning to you, Patty. I haven't spoken to you since the New Year, so I was a little late, but a very happy New Year to you and your listeners and your family, and I think we're all due for a good year, so all the best to you and your family and your listeners.
Thank you, and the same to you.
I appreciate it, Patty. I'm going to be brief. I wanted to just mention one quick thing before I get to my topic. I heard your conversation with the gentleman from Newfoundland Power. We're not unlike a lot of people who have seen increases in our electrical bills this time of year. Again, this will be the third year in a row. And what is frustrating for us is that nothing has changed in our home. If anything, we've gone to conserving as much electricity as possible. In the winter months, when the drier air comes in, we actually hang our laundry up downstairs to put some moisture into the house and save some money on our electrical bill. I can't remember the last time I turned on a dryer. We have no children in the home, no pets. People aren't coming and going. And it's difficult, it's frustrating when you're constantly explaining to Newfoundland Power and they say, Christmas and lights and this and heat. We're on oil heat. We don't have electric heat. So it doesn't matter about being windy, it doesn't matter about being cold. That's our oil. But it's like talking to a rock. They just won't listen. So I don't know if your bills have gone up like other people's. It seems to be a sporadic kind of thing, but we have no space heaters. We don't use the wash or the dryer. We have little, convection ovens and air fryers. We've gone that way as well. So our consumption should be gone down, but it's not. It's gone up. We paid 44% more last month than we did this time last year. There's something up. I know that they can just say, no, everything is good, but there's something up with it. I just wanted to mention that before I get to my quick topic, because it's a bit frustrating when more money is coming from our bank account and nobody can seem to give a reason why.
Well, I tried to get some answers.
I know you did. Patty, very quickly, when it comes to our city of St. John's and any municipality, I totally understand that, there's affordable housing issues and public transit and climate change and economic development. I totally get it. Running a city is not easy, but at the same time, we can't forget about our core services, our water and sewer and garbage collection, our snow clearing, etc. Today was a day that the decision, I think, should have been made to postpone garbage collection and especially recycling in our area and a big part of the city. As I go around this morning and I do my thing, there's garbage everywhere. Recycling bags are busted open. There's milk cartons and cardboard, and you name it. Just the city looks like a cyclone struck it. And I don't know. I'm sure they have protocol, and I'm sure they have a manual that they go by. But common sense has to come into play here sometime as well. We are so fortunate to have a second, I shouldn't say second, is more than a second, but Briar here in a few short weeks. And I don't put tourists ahead of residents. I'm just saying that we have thousands and thousands of people who are going to be visiting our beautiful city in our, not our bumper time of the year. We've always tried to find a way to get people to come here in the fall and winter, and we did. And now all this garbage that's being strewn around, there's nobody going around and picking it up this time of year. The cardboard is going to, get all sloppy and sludgy and freezing and down into the sewers and blocking up sewers and it's a total nuisance and it's totally unnecessary. So I just wanted to say, when it comes to the city, I totally get it. It's hard. It's hard to run a city, but you have to use your common sense. And if we could find a way to do the easy things well, that would go a long way to stopping a day like today where we have so much garbage and trash blowing around the city. And I hope it's not disrespectful, but I think it's for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, the last windy garbage day in our neighborhood, when I went home after the show, I had to get out of the car moving garbage bins out of the road. There was garbage everywhere. There was bins blown up and down the street, out in the middle of the street, on their side, on their back. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
And again today when I got up, it was blowing to 88. I have a weather station at my home, so, it's sort of kind of accurate. It's still blowing over 80, and the city is a mess. And I just wanted to say, not pointing fingers or blaming anybody, but boys, if we could just do the easy things well, I think it'd go a long way to keep our city a hell of a lot cleaner.
Appreciate the time, Walter. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, it's hard to argue with that one. Let's go to line number 6. Max, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi there.
How you doing, Pat?
Doing okay.
What's happening?
Not a whole lot. Banging out a show. How you doing?
Yeah. What do you call it? I just came back from Ontario. I lived there for 48 years. And it's after turning into a cesspool up there. I think what they should do up there to fight Donald Trump, they should take down those bridges that are going from Ontario to the United States. Because Ontario, Mississauga, and Toronto are having big problems with Americans, and they're having problems with these Palestinians who are coming in. So, I mean, like, it seems like Toronto and Mississauga is turning into some other people bringing their garbage into Canada. Canada's a strong country. We don't need the U.S. We use the U.S. We don't need them.
We do indeed need a healthy relationship with the United States, and hopefully that could be achieved sometime in the future. It doesn't look likely at this moment in time. And, you know, cutting or shutting down transport between the two countries, whether it be at the Ambassador Bridge or Coots or otherwise, that's sort of a cut off our nose to spite our face kind of stuff. We really do need a very, as free as possible, flow of residents and citizens and trade and commerce across those bridges and borders. So I understand people are very frustrated with what's going on, and I'm one of them. And it needn't be this way. You know, we had very healthy negotiated contracts and, you know, some policies and rules that were in place that were beneficial to both Canada and the United States. And it's just got blown up, and for absolutely no good reason. You know, talk about national security and fentanyl. I mean, they're important matters, but they weren't really the reason here. I mean, the whole imperialistic tone of the United States, I mean, just read a history book. It doesn't work out in the end.
No, but the thing is, we did have a good relationship with the Americans.
Absolutely.
I mean, like I say, I lived up there for most of my life. But I'm finding that they voted him in, and and so now they should get what they deserve. I think Canada's a strong country, and we can live without them. But the Americans, we don't need the Americans. The Yanks can go back.
Yeah, as much as they pretend that they don't need a healthy relationship with us is also patently ridiculous, because they do. Yeah. There's a reason why the trade agreements were working for all three countries in this case, when we include Mexico into the trilateral trade agreement. And, you know, all this stuff about, you know, just want American-made cars. I mean, the auto industry, even the American executives are saying out loud that doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing as a vehicle be made in full with every part and component built in one country or another. It's an integrated auto industry based on, you know, not only cooperative issues regarding economics, but there's certain laws associated with the integration of the auto industry. I mean, they need our steel and aluminum. They need our hydro. They need our oil. They need our potash. So we just got to stop pretending that, you know, it's just a one-way street. They don't need us. We just need them. It's just not the way it's ever worked.
I worked in the auto industry. I was down in, down in Nashville, down the Kia, studying robotics. And it was, it was a good relationship. But, you know, sometimes a relationship, you know, is not working and you got to get rid of it, you know.
Sure. But, you know, getting rid of it in full in one fell swoop is probably not going to help either, because it's a complicated world if we're talking about economic relationships and trade internationally. So I just think we're in a really bizarre spot.
Thanks a million.
Appreciate your time.
Day.
You too, Max. All the best.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And, you know, I also heard references to the Prime Minister's speech at Davos yesterday as being anti-American. But it's only that if you want it to be that way. You know, talking about the realities of life isn't anti-anything. It's just talking about exactly where we are. And I don't know what he said that is actually wrong here. And I can't tell you how many emails I'm just bombarded with things like, you know, cozying up to China. Did we cozy up to China? I mean, most of the world does business with China. Should we be very wary of issues regarding human rights violations and security threats in this country on behalf or at the behest of the Chinese and the Chinese Communist Party? Absolutely. We were already doing business with China. And if you want to talk about whoever has, quote-unquote, cozy up to China, I know it's a long time ago, but it has 3-decade-plus implication of a concerted deal, as is referred to as FIPA, signed by Prime Minister Harper. I mean, we just got to stop pretending that the world only operates inside a 3-foot window, a 3-foot bubble, and nothing has changed in the last 12 months, 10 years, 2 decades, because there's just not really an accurate depiction of what is actually going on. Let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line number 2. Russell, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty, I was very interesting show this morning,
Thanks.
and a lot of things that I can really equate to, especially like losing your house, getting divorced, having to move into other facilities, trying to keep a roof over your head, trying to pay the rent $1,500 a month. And it hasn't been easy, and it's still not easy. I'm basically in an Airbnb from a good friend that has been subsidizing me really since I've been here. I'm paying $1,500 a month rent. That's been on the go now for, 3 years since my wife divorced me, and basically said to me she never loved me. She married me for the money. So I'm in this place now till hopefully close to the end of May, and keeping the roof over my head and trying to pay Gerald's daughter who owns this house at this time.
I'm sorry to hear your personal struggles that we've talked about in the past. Did you want to talk about aquaculture as well this morning?
Yeah. I had two things I want to talk to you about. It's very interesting there what the guy Byron from Light and Power said, and I wish I could do some work for him because, I'm an expert really in HVAC. I had a job related to the DSM and the DES on the rig that was built out in Bull Arm, I do believe, at least the base. Then it was floated out, and the two all the modules went on. But I was working with a company named it was under ExxonMobil. They were the engineering company from people from all over the world that worked under DES and DSM in Littledale. And I don't understand why Synovus and BP can't do the same thing. We have people there from all over the world. Right. And our little group that does the DES, which is the drill and service module, and the drill and equipment set, that's the module that they were talking about yesterday for Synovus. So I don't see why that cannot be done out there.
Well, Synovus just completed all that onshore work for the West White Rose.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in Argentia.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the new boat that they're bringing over.
Yeah, okay, so I'm sorry, what was the point?
Yeah. The new boat that they're doing over probably in Europe, I expect. It's a big old floating ship. And then there's all type of modules on it. So how come that can't get done over in Newfoundland?
Well, there's plenty of things that we can do here. It's whether or not we can actually convince the companies to do it here based on benefits agreements, which is kind of the starting point for, onshore fabrication, onshore work, local companies' access to whether it be subsea or onshore. So, the short answer is there's plenty of things we can do.
All the modules, all the modules say for the that gravity base, the Ebron. My daughter is a production engineer on that thing. She's out 3 weeks in. Right?
Okay.
Why can't we do all that here? That's my question.
Well, we do have some restrictions insofar as the size of lay-down yards required for some of the work that's done regarding the offshore, but there's more we can do here. Absolutely.
Yeah. Why can't we make a dock to build the hull of the ship? Why can't that not be done here? That's what I don't understand, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and why can't everything that's getting done on that ship be done here in North America, like the North American Free Trade? Tell Mr. Trump to reinitiate the North American Free Trade and then work out whatever he's working out with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I'm not so sure of the likelihood of that outcome, but it's a real crying shame, to be honest.
But he's interested in getting a North American Free Trade deal. And he's taking over countries to do it.
Well, he's talking about it anyway, which is all bad enough.
Yeah.
Russell, anything else this morning?
No, we were going to talk about the fish hatcheries.
Okay.
I work with a company named Silk Stevens Limited. They're into research aquaculture. You got, we did the Sam Livingston fish hatchery out in Calgary, a big old building that was totally renovated into research aquaculture. We did all the drawings, and our people went out there and worked on it. And there's other companies right in Newfoundland and Atlantic Canada that's into research agriculture. How come that can't be done down in Mirstown? That's my question, Patty.
Well, it's a good question. You know, I've asked out loud as to like a cost analysis of trying to suffer with the unpredictable nature of the ocean regarding temperature and sea lice outbreaks and what have you, and what that costs the industry versus how we compare to moving onshore where you have full control over things like water temperature.
Yeah. You have full control of the temperature, of the water temperature, of the lice or whatever. You have full control of everything. With filters and That's
true. And I don't know if I assume they've done that analysis given that it is their business model. But anyway, the future of that industry, I know it's been an economic savior in some of these small communities here in this province, but it has come with serious environmental consequences as well. Not because I say so, because even the companies say so. The guy who was the Eastern director for Maui said he's been in the industry for 40 years. Last year was the worst that he ever saw. And that was talking about specifically the die-offs that they experienced. Russell, I appreciate the time. I got to get going.
No problem, sir.
You take good care. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
No problem. Bye. All right, let's go to line number 1. Sandra, you're on the air.
Patty, I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible, but I'd like to work in something else if I could.
Go ahead.
You had a man on that was just speaking about the smart meters. Now, I was watching a show that comes on one Saturday morning. It was a nice while back, and it had to do with in America where they had the smart meters come out. Now, apparently a lot of people had availed to it, thinking it was going to bring down the cost of their power bills. But after it was installed and they started receiving their bills, they noticed their bills went up tremendously. So anyways, there was an investigation done according to the show, and they had found out that the smart meters that were installed, now I don't know if there's different types of smart meters or there's just one kind, I don't know, and I don't know if the Canadian smart meters differ from the ones they're using in America, but they found out that the smart meters that were installed in new homes worked okay. They worked as they were supposed to. But the people who had the bills that were rising to an extraordinary cost, they found out that it was due to because they were no good installed in older homes with old wiring. So anyways, I kind of think there was a lot of things that they didn't test on as to with old wiring on how it would relate to it working efficiently. So anyways, I don't know what they did to remedy the situation, but according to the show, there wasn't very many happy people that had these meters installed. So when I heard about that, it was at around the same time I started hearing on the news about smart meters as well. So I said to myself, with the way my bills are and the way my living is and knowing I'm on social services, I would not want a smart meter installed in knowing I have an older home, and that if the kinks weren't taken out of like how it's supposed to work within older homes, wouldn't want to face an extraordinary bill coming to me each month thereafter and be sorry that I availed to a smart meter. Now, I don't know if the gentleman that you had on the news is aware of hearing that program. Now, it was on a while back ago. It was on, I think CBS was who carried it, or it could have been on Channel 5. I know it was one of the shows on those two channels that basically do 3 or 4 interviews as to specific things, and this is where I heard it. Now, if anyone that listens to your show also heard it, maybe they can specify the exact show it was on. But it put me into a great mode of thinking that sometimes something that sounds good can come off not too good to be true. So I thought I'd make you aware of that, and maybe that's a question for Light and Power for the smart meters, if they know it's actually going to work in the older homes with the old wiring efficiently like it's supposed to in the newer homes.
I'm happy to chase that particular issue, no problem. And also, there's an example closer to home as some of the problems maybe with smart meters in Nova Scotia. They made the move to smart meters, and in very short order, there was a cyber attack. The personal information of all of their customers at Nova Scotia Power was compromised, and then consequently, they were guessing, doing estimates at bills for months afterwards. So there are some issues that still pop up when you talk about a smart meter. That you're very, very true. And I'll chase that older home, older wiring story a little bit myself.
Yes, that would be good, because I would hate to see the issues coming up in Canada like came up in the States, and then there's people hoping that their bills are going to be reduced and end up with extraordinary amounts to pay that they can't afford, and then be put in a position of, what did I do now? And look at the mess I'm in because of something that was supposed to better me, but now it's got me in more of a mess than what I actually am already in. But the other issue that has been of a good topic within the news and everything, as to the lady that got shot by ICE. Now, I've been looking at that over and over again, and everybody seems to be trying to guess what's in that lady's head at that time. And that's something that nobody would ever be able to pin down as to what she was thinking at the time in order for all this stuff to have occurred to her, which I thought was really sad in seeing and very devastating to anybody that was around to see the behavior of the way ICE had treated her, because the lady seemed to be in a calm mood. She wasn't, I feel deserving of being shot the way she was.
Of course not.
Because there was enough of them there that, I know with police, when somebody is on the run or anything like that, the first thing they do is try to take out their tires so they can't get anywhere. And I kind of think not too wise of a thing to put yourself as a human being in front of a moving vehicle to try to prevent somebody to stop and go any further, because that lady could have been frightened. She could have been trying to run the guy down, but I noticed her wheels were cut hard over to make a sharp turn. So I don't really think that lady was trying to run into that man, but like I said, you don't know what was in the lady's head. But I kind of think there would have been a better way for these people to have handled a situation if she didn't want to get out of the vehicle. All they had to do was shoot out her tires and not attack the lady, because she had a family that now is missing her, and they need answers as to why it was handled in that situation.
Yeah, and as of now, they're not going to get any. They're not going to get any answers, which is just unbelievable. Any law enforcement shooting should absolutely see a comprehensive investigation. And we're told by the Department of Justice that it's not going to happen. They say, well, we've all seen the video, so no further investigation required. Even though the FBI, they took the vehicle and they talked about some level of investigation, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Sandra, I really appreciate making time for the show. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you very much, Patty, for listening to me. You have a good day.
Same to you. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Very quickly, email that floated in out of the corner of my eye. So on a subject line with Greenland. I'll go ahead and give it a bit more of a read. The whole Greenland story is bonkers to me. But anyway, so here's just a really strange factoid associated with Denmark and selling an island or selling anything to the United States. The last time the United States bought an island from Denmark, and it's out in the Virgin Islands archipelago, so it was back in 1917, and the name of the island is Little St. James. And do you know what Little St. James is called these days? Epstein Island. That's the island they bought from Denmark in 1917, Little St. James, now nicknamed Epstein Island. It's a weird little world. Let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3. Charlie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
You just stole my story. I was about to talk about the 1917 agreement with Denmark.
No way.
One thing you didn't mention, I don't think you did, was that at the time the U.S. agreed that Denmark would have sovereignty over Greenland, and it was after that most nations accepted that. So that was a major part of that.
Yeah.
I think that for a country to take over after treaties like that, they would have to. The U.S. would have to have the Senate involved, as far as I know. I could be wrong on that. So I think he's trying to get around that by forcing the issue. Well, anyway, it's just my take, and I'm going to check that later, right?
Yeah, the treaty was once again re-upped in 1951, saying the same thing. That also included the free movement of American military as long as they gave the Danish and the Greenland government the heads up. So I'll add that to it. And insofar as whether it be $700 billion to buy it or military action therein, all of that requires congressional approval. Well, it always did. Whether or not it's going to in the future remains to be seen.
Well, if he did it without that, the next president would probably revert everything there, you know.
Probably.
Patty, I've been following. I've been accused of having the Trump syndrome, and I suppose I've had it because the guy fascinated me. I knew about him before he ran for the U.S. presidency. I knew a fair bit about him. But when he became a candidate and when he got elected, I went crazy reading from his family history and business people he'd worked with and on down the line, contractors, journalists, you name it. And then I got fascinated with the people, after finding out what he was like, the people that would actually follow him. That was something else. I'm talking church people, especially Southern Baptists, people who favor abortion, established Republicans who would never vote Democrat, Nazi far-right types. Their grandfathers took part in the Nazi movement back in the 40s. Rich elite types, disaffected workers. The Democrats are mostly responsible for losing a lot of disaffected workers when the jobs went to China, right? Anti-immigrant was another one. Anyway, he saw that base and he catered to that group, right? And he's still doing it, and it's a big base. We're talking 35 to 40% of Americans. I talk to I'd say about a dozen Americans each week through Scrabble. Some won't talk, many will. And I ask about the situation down there, and you would not believe the concern and angst and intrepidation and everything else that's going on there. They are scared people, and very, very many of them, by the way, are apologetic to, which I wish they weren't. Apologize to me for what's happening with the Canadian thing. I don't know if you want to comment on any of this before I go on to the next part.
Well, I'm sure it's very unsettling times, financially, politically, societally. It's bonkers. I mean, I try to turn a bit of a deaf ear to it as much as possible, but it's unavoidable. I mean, you've got to be able to factor in what's going on south of the border into how it impacts daily life in this country, because it's unavoidable for every reason known to man. And it's just, I mean, the media, we're terrible. You know, the way things get covered is just outrageous. And I know that, you know, when sex sells, so does nonsense, and so does hate. And the unfortunate reality is, ever since we monetized the 10 o'clock news has been awful for the most part. The motivation of big business on this front, and the way that, look, I mean, Trump is good for ratings. He's bad for the world, but he's good for ratings. And so consequently, that's how we see him covered. And it's just remarkable to me. And it's really becoming difficult how to decipher and to absorb the type of information we get, whether it be traditional media, television, cable news, social media, whatever the case may be. The world is absolutely bonkers.
Well, I agree with you on all that. Carney's speech yesterday, I've listened to it 2 or 3 times, sections of it. I had really admired a guy that I didn't think he was going to do it, because he's been trying to appease him and keep that child happy, and you can't do it. It's just not working out for us and for anybody else, because the baseline keeps moving, the goalpost, I should say. So I thought he did well. The only way you can beat that guy is to stand up to him. I think many people have already established that. It means probably we're going to have to endure some pain for 2 or 3 years, although I think it'll change after Congress turns Democrat next November. But I think we have to put up with that pain. We just can't keep trying to make that guy happy. It's just not working, right?
We have to do what's best for Canada. We have to control what we can control, and that's very little outside of our own politics. Now, I thought the speech was really quite impressive, but of course, actions will speak louder than words. They always have, and they always will be, and that'll be the case into the future. But even some of the, like, I don't know how much input Mark Carney had for writing that speech himself, but it was delivered pretty on point. And, you know, a couple of the lines that will stick with people, because it was very much a consequential speech, whether that be good consequences or maybe not so much in some corners. But the one line that I probably will remember for a long time is, you know, talk about collaboration, and if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah, I like that.
That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, well, I'd like to throw a bouquet to the new president of Memorial, getting back to local stuff for what she did with cutting the VPs at the top. I think that was a courageous step, and I think it was needed to show that they mean business in cutting expenses there, you know.
Yep.
Anyway, I guess I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Just a little snippet from it. When we only negotiate bilaterally with the hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's a performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination. Let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Barry, you're on the air.
Happy New Year to you, sir.
Same to you.
I'm calling in regards to, snow clearing on Veterans Memorial Highway and out towards Bay Roberts, Carbonear, that area.
Yep.
So in November, when we had one of our first snow events, just before they put the 24-hour snow clearing back on the highway, I was traveling. I had to go in St. John's and drop someone off, and before I left, there was no snow event happening, and it wasn't supposed to be as bad as what they said it was going to be, and it ended up being worse. And so anyways, I came through the door around 12:30 that night, and I said I better get going because the snow is starting to come down pretty good there now. So not anticipating that there wouldn't be any plows on the road. So I got as far as Witness Bay Bulls turnoff to go there from the highway, and I kept on continuing heading towards Carbonear, and the road was not plowed from there right on into Carbonear. I got in on Veterans Memorial Highway turnoff where you can either go Old Roach's line or go on down to Veterans. And there was RCMP on the highway there with lights flashing, a vehicle in the road side on a Honda Civic, and then tow truck backing up to a van with someone aboard. And so I asked RCMP, is it okay to go on? And none the where, I didn't think there was anything happening. I got in Carbonear, and the skirt to the vehicle, the underbody skirt that covers both sides, was dragging on the road. And so I got her to a garage right away and had her all checked out. And the underbelly skirt on one side was hanging down, the other side was completely ripped off. And it was because the roads wasn't plowed. And what I found out was they took the plows off the road at 9:30 in the night. Which was really early, and that's the time they were taking them off at the time. And fast forward, a bit of time, letter back and forth to Department of Transport. They claimed that they weren't responsible, and then the insurance, way it falls under insurance, is that you got to take an at-fault incident on your insurance. Even though you didn't strike anything, even though you didn't run into a snowbank, you got to take it at fault, which we all know that if you got an at fault against you, drives up your insurance. So we'll fast forward to the snow events that happened since, and the Veterans Memorial Highway is getting plowed, but whoever is plowing it, I give credit where credit's due. They're plowing it, but maybe I have no idea. I can't explain to you why. But what happens on a snow plow is some people call them highways, some people call them flyer truck. What happens on them is you got to put the down pressure down on the blade in order to clear off whatever's in this, whatever you're clearing, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't have the down pressure on it, it leaves a rut in the center of the road, because the way the blade is curved for you to be going fast and be able to push that snow off the side of the road. And the down pressure wasn't pushed down on the blades, and we see vehicles, oodles of vehicles that are going along, and their underbelly skirts are dragging on the road from the same type of damage that occurred in November, including RCMP vehicles this morning I've seen with the underbelly skirt hanging down on it. So, like I explained to the Department of Transport, listen, these people who got no other choice but to be on the road, the RCMP, nurses, doctors, ambulances, the highway's got to be plowed for those people to get back and forth. How do you expect an ambulance to get back and forth when someone's having a heart attack that they can't deal with, and they got to transport them, to St. John's rather than Carbonear? We got to go on to St. John's with them because it's critical now. And how do you expect an ambulance to get through if the highway's not plowed? And so that's what I brought up to highways at the time. But since that time, the roads are not getting plowed appropriately. I don't know if it's lack of training or what, but when you go down the highway, it should be down to the pavement or close enough to it, and there should not be bowled up in the center. People are going along, and like I said, they're ripping off their skirts because there's no down pressure being pushed down on the blade. I don't know if they're being told to save on the cutting edge, or I have no idea what the issue is, but even currently right now, the sun is beaming at the sky, and no truck to be seen getting that stuff off, so people don't, roads don't get slippery later when it gets cold, and avoiding the accidents from happening.
All makes sense to me. I even wonder sometimes with the profound rutting on some of the highways, even if a plow can actually get all of the snow, they seem to be doing a pretty good job. Look, I'm not coming down on plow operators. They've got their hands full and people like to complain about them. But even just some of the processes and just some of the quality of the road. I mean, you see some of the roads that have some very serious potholes, and the plow can't possibly dig into every single pothole. So if we created little mini skating rinks all over the place in some roads too.
Yeah, it's true what you're saying, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about down the center, like between your wheels.
Yeah, I understand.
And if you put enough down pressure down on the blade, it takes that. And so, I don't know if it's I'm only talking about the Veterans Memorial Highway, and I'm talking about the Trans-Canada or anything like that, but that's where we're finding the issue. And right from there out to Brigus Junction is terrible. It's horrible. And I don't know if someone needs to have a chat with someone and say, okay, listen, put some down pressure on, man, take this stuff off so that we can avoid accidents or damage to people's vehicles. And you're going to have oodles of people come forward and knocking on the door of a lawyer and saying, hey, it's not only one person that's getting a lot of damage. It's 100 people got their vehicles damaged. I'm just coming up with a number and just off the top of my head. But you go down the road yesterday, and just about every second vehicle had their underbelly skirt tore off and dragging on the road.
Yeah, it needn't be that way. Yeah, you painted a pretty clear picture.
So sometimes just talking to someone to say, okay, maybe they're not aware of it, and a little talk to someone, say, okay, listen, man, put a little more down pressure on that blade so that you can get that stuff off. we're going to lessen the accidents that are happening. And this morning, unfortunately, I've seen someone on the side of the highway, and the bumper was tore off the vehicle. I don't know what happened there. I guess it's slippery out today too as well. So, but for those issues they're easy to task and take care of. And let's try to avoid the accidents from happening and damage.
Here. Point well made. Really appreciate the time. Thanks, Barry.
You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Let's get a break here for the news. When we come back, Brian's in the queue to talk about bullying in the workplace. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Brian, you're on the air.
I know my topic was bullying in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've been involved with different organizations over the years. It always seems to come down to people a lot of times spreading misinformation, and it causes a lot of strife, right?
No question.
And it's looking back, we look at the postal strike that we just had, how much anguish that caused people. Delayed in services, and, it's mind-boggling. I'm a retired teacher, and I remember being in discussions over the years, and we didn't have too many strikes. And I would say that people should negotiate and not legislate. It causes a lot of anguish for employers and employees. Patty, you must have heard of this, but John Lennon had a song called Imagine.
Correct.
And I think that would sum up for a lot of people the way that things should be done. People think that, I've heard people say, oh, we don't need unions, everything, Jeez. You need unions have a place. Sometimes they jump too quickly, and sometimes they might want to just sit back, look at the situation, and come to a resolution. I guess that's my feel for today.
Okay, and I appreciate you making time, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye. I mean, I think there's consensus around there's certainly sentiment around the country about the relationship between governments and organised labour, and I think that's growing. I mean, they were talking about a general strike in Ontario, a general strike in Alberta, things with governments legislating back the port workers, the rail workers, Air Canada stewards, what are they? We don't call them stewardesses anymore, flight attendants. So yeah, that's Section 107 inside the legal authority to do it, but boy, it's getting pretty tense, I think. Let's go to line 2. Ray, you're on the air.
Yes, and pleasant good morning to you, Patty.
The same to you.
Patty, we've been led around by the nose forever. Like here we got the $15 billion project up there in Labrador. It was made up between the banks and Newfoundland, Labrador, Leighton Power, or whoever. Like, why not charge Quebec 66% of the original cost? They get the lion's share. Why don't hydro users pay 10% across the board? That'd up Quebec's users and United States users to a level where we could come down to probably 10%. Here we got 300,000 users trying to pay off this massive debt and give away our hydro to Quebec so they can sell it down to the United States for their people and let them all have a break.
Well,
give me a break for oil.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a break. I think the short answer to that is that we have a contract with them that we've tried to open several times. I think as many as 7 court challenges to try to get some redress, to have zero success until they needed more power. They came to us with the willingness to reopen it. Now, when people talk about, the annualized average cost of the Quebec ratepayers around 8 cents, we're around 15 cents. And I hear that argument all the time that we should be paying less if we're going to enter into specifically the arrangement at Gull Island. I guess the only way that can work is if government takes any potential revenue from that deal and puts it and earmarks it for keeping our rate stable or some potential reduction, which I can't necessarily see. But that's the rate conversation as far as I can tell.
I think they should have a numbers game. Take a look at the great numbers of people that are using the hydro outside of Newfoundland. Get everybody on the same page. And everybody try and have an equal amount of pay for a kilowatt hour instead of punishing us because we've got the greatest hydro development on the go right here in Churchill Falls. We're being punished because we got the greatest hydro development. And here, once again, people in Quebec, people in the States are paying lower rates than we are, and we're only a handful of people. And they have great numbers of people who could be paying more, get this debt paid off, and try, for heaven's sakes, to make everybody happy.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I thank you for your time, Patty.
I appreciate yours, Ray.
I hope more and more people call up and scream blue murder about this because this is terrible. It's a very bad arrangement, and there's too many of our senior citizens and everything going hungry to try and pay this enormous bill when so many users are getting this product way less than we're paying ourselves.
Point taken. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye
And
now.
the look, just in the world of hypotheticals. So let's just say there's some pathway to definitive agreements. And who knows? It seems less likely as days go by. But anyway, the only way we're going to see any rate control here is if government decides to use the money for it. Because remember, we're spending over $500 million a year at this moment of time just to try to keep our muskrat-related rates at an increase of 2.25% annually. And then in 2030, that money is dried up. Well, there certainly hasn't been any information about that being extended past 2030. So and again, just hypothetically, if we can find ourselves with some sort of agreement with Hydro-Quebec, the province of Quebec, regarding expansion at the Upper Churchill, development of Gull, the 2 associated transmission projects, they would have to earmark it for very specific purposes. If it's just going to be a free flow into the coffers to spend on whatever they see fit, that's probably not a very good idea. Why? Because look at how we've spent money in the last 30, 40, 50 years here. So the 3 areas that I think would be of most concern for most people would be some sort of attention to the debt. To service the debt annually costs in excess of $1 billion or around $1 billion per year. And that's just to service it, not to chip away at it. Then it's to try to control annual deficits. And then, of course, as many people rightfully point out, is our power bills. And that's only going to happen if the government here, whoever's in power at whatever time, if they earmark it specifically for those types of things, including our power rates. I mean, certainly Hydro-Quebec's not going to come to the table and say, hey, how about this? Let's subsidize directly your power bills in Newfoundland and Labrador. I mean, they have a very sweetheart deal as it pertains to how much they pay as ratepayers and how they're able to back out so much of the wealth that comes from hydro insofar as the equalization formula goes. I mean, that unlevel playing field has to change sometime in the future. And you hear a lot about equalization these days, especially in Western Canada. Even though I think some of the messaging is just completely and wholly inaccurate, which is not helpful whatsoever. But they do have an absolute point when it comes to this equalization formula being very, very generous to the province of Quebec. It's true. It's also worth pointing out that this formula was just simply green-lit again or rubber-stamped to proceed. And this exact formula was created by a Western Canadian Prime Minister. Right? I mean, that's true. And when Jason Kenney was the Premier in Alberta, and he spoke about this a lot, and he really went after the federal Liberal government about it all the time, but at the exact same moment, Jason Kenney was a senior cabinet minister who was part of the discussion that created this current equalisation formula. It was wild times. All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. I'm not really sure, maybe someone's just trying to yank my chain, but remarkable that at least two people this morning are trying to tell me that the president's agenda is to try to protect everyday folk, not his billionaire buddies, including himself. Ooh, boy, oh boy. Same email says, why am I not talking about the Polyev story? I'm not necessarily sure what that means, but there's few reasons why he's in the news these days. Number one, he's up for a leadership review. I don't know what the Conservative members are going to consider here and the future of Mr. Polyev at the helm of the party. I really have no idea. I'm sure he thinks he's in a bit of a scramble here, but he also might be talking about the fact that the party has now announced that in the next federal election, whenever that might be, that Mr. Polyev will not be running in Battle River Crowfoot, where, of course, when he lost in Carleton, where he had been the representative for maybe 17 years, then he decided to run in a by-election in Battle River Crowfoot. As a result, Damien Currick, who was the elected member there, stepped down to open up the potential for Mr. Polyev to run. Now the party says in the next election, he will not run in that riding. He's going to have to find somewhere else to run, and Damien Currick will be representing the party. I don't know if there's going to be a nomination race that anyone will challenge Mr. Currick, but yeah, maybe that's the story that you're talking about, is that, interestingly enough, he went out to Alberta to run, won the seat in the by-election, and now not going to run in that seat in the future. The candidate that won the last election is going to run. It's a bit confusing, but c'est la vie. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to the PC member for Terra Nova, also the Minister of Energy and Mines. That's Lloyd Parrott. And good morning, Minister Parrott. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How you doing?
Not too bad. How about you?
Doing well.
Good.
We haven't chatted in a while. I figured today was a great time to call in, given all the chatter and banter around the Bay du Nord negotiations, and I figured I'd call in and clear the air.
Sure. I mean, I do know as much as the deadline of December regarding Decision Gate 2, as Equinor calls it, was a company decision, and I assume a company decision to not meet their own self-imposed deadline. So what exactly is going on?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right when you say that, Paddy. We've, since we got sworn in back in November, we immediately began discussions with Equinor, and the discussions have been, fruitful, beneficial, and moving forward on a regular basis. And as with any commercial agreement, obviously you're not going to the public to discuss a lot of these things covered inside the framework of a benefits agreement. So leading into December, DG2, as they referred to it, which was a self-imposed deadline by them, 15 of December, they knew that we were traveling to Ottawa at the time to have discussions with, at the time, the federal government. They made the decision to postpone, and it was a good decision on their behalf. So, believe me when I say this government is looking for the best agreement for the province and the men and women that work in the trades, from a royalties regime, whether that includes, any kind of equity in the project, and certainly making sure that we have the people working here. So we are moving forward very, very at a very steady pace. Equinor is extremely happy with negotiations, as are we to date. That doesn't mean we haven't hit some hurdles. The reality is we met with the main officer from Equinor yesterday, and he was here overseeing tour, and he was online. We've met with them several times. I've personally met with them 3 times, 2 times with the Premier. The Premier's met with them 4 times. And to hear opposition out saying that there's no transparency, and this is the same people while they were in government that told Equinor that they shouldn't talk to opposition, and opposition has been afforded the opportunity to talk to them 2 days ago, and I believe that both Equinor and us and the people of the province should be disappointed in the language they're using and how they're trying to highlight this as a political ploy.
Well, I mean, at the same time, in all fairness, when you folks were in opposition and we were talking about Upper Churchill negotiations, you were asking for a lot more information to be shared publicly, even though it's a commercial arrangement with a lot of commercial sensitivities, I would imagine. Haven't been involved, obviously, in any negotiation. So, yeah, we're there. Insofar as the benefits agreement goes, a couple of quick questions. You know, the Premier said he was encouraged that Equinor had agreed for the language and the expressions of interest, like the one that was released yesterday, to include opportunities for this province, which was always going to be the case, even just given the framework at the CNLOPB. It's the competitiveness issue on cost. I mean, are you hopeful that we can actually hit those targets? I know the Premier was endorsed by Trades NL, and they want to see, some 70-80% of the work done here. But writing the language of the EOIs is going to be specific reference to cost competitiveness. Can we hit that?
Yeah, listen, so I sat on the board of directors for Hebron while it was being built. I've seen what the men and women of this province can do from a work standpoint. I understand what our outputs are. I believe that Trades NL and their membership, along with the fabrication and maintenance shops in this province, are competitive with anyone in the world. So, I mean, I can't tell a proponent how to bid something. The reality is that if cost is met or comparative and it doesn't affect schedule, then we can do the work here, and that's going to be up to the proponents to bid. And we will find a way to get work from this agreement here in this province that extends beyond subsea work, topsides or an alternative. And we've been very clear on that to Equinor, and we're very clear on that with the building trades. It's essential that this agreement benefits this province in the long term. The Premier has been very clear on that. We're back in the oil business, and I know that the Liberals have said we were never out. I would argue that we were out for a long time. If you look from 2015 to 2026, the amount of exploration, the amount of work that's happened, there hasn't been very much or none, to be quite frank. We just got word 2 days ago that Cenovus is going on exploratory drilling again. Equinor is saying that this project will mean more work in the future. We're looking for whatever benefits we can drag out of this, and we've done it in the past, and we're going to do it again.
Also with benefits, and I don't know how much you're going to be able to share here this morning, but we do know that when the Liberals were in government, and we talk about the implications of Article 82 of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties are going to have to be paid through that entity into what they call developing nations. The Liberals were saying that it is not provincial responsibility, given the fact the country of Canada signed on, not the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. What's your party's position on that, and where does Article 82 belong in the benefits discussion?
Yeah, so I will say we met with the federal government. I've met with the defense minister and the minister of natural resources, and the premier has met with the prime minister. UNCLOS is a conversation that is being discussed both at the table and with our federal counterparts. At the end of the day, we expect that the federal government is going to step up and hold up their responsibility.
So we think the federal government is going to cover, because full well Equinor doesn't want to cover it.
So it is the federal government that signed off on this, and we don't. There's no argument against that. At the end of the day, Equinor has an expectation, and they understand what this looks like, and they have this in their costing. But this is a project of national interest, in my opinion, and certainly in the opinion of many other people. And as with any negotiation, UNCLOS is on the table, and we're hoping to utilize the UNCLOS to make sure this project gets done and that men and women in this province receive the work as a result of.
The Liberals were also talking about equity stake, like we have in all the offshore oil fields. Whether or not that's a good idea, I'll leave it up to the individual listener. But they were talking about moving forward only with a 10% equity stake. What's your government's position on equity?
So again, all of that stuff is being negotiated as we speak. We've seen equity pay out in the past and work for us. So all of those options are being discussed, and sometime between now and the end of February, it will all be disclosed. What I would say, Patty, is that Equinor is a very willing partner with the province of Newfoundland and the PC government and the Premier. Premier Wakeham has had conversations with them, and at the end of the day, when this contract is signed, it will be the most beneficial possible to both parties, and that's what a negotiation is. There has to be winners on both sides, and equity is part of what we're discussing. There's no question about it.
I don't know if you're able to, so to speak, speak out of school here, but maybe a question better for Equinor. But they were talking about restructuring the project, away from their 60-40 arrangement with BP, trying to bring other players in or rejig their own equity breakdown. Do you know if that's been done and if there's new partners, or what can you tell us about that?
So as it stands right now, to my knowledge, they brought in a third party to build the FPSO, and it's a partnership. I don't believe there's an equity stake there. They've done that to reduce costs. As it stands right now, BP and Equinor are the two main shareholders, and if that changes, it's a business decision on their behalf, and we'll be notified. Paddy, what I will say is that we haven't had a project of this magnitude in quite some time, and everyone is chomping at the bit for this to move forward, including the government and Equinor. And these negotiations are happening daily, and it's disappointing to hear the Liberals. What I would say is that I heard MHA Hogan talk about hopeful for Newfoundland and Labrador and what he would do if he was the premier or the minister or whatever. The reality is he was the premier and he was the minister, and none of these conversations were pushed forward. So in 2022, after sanctioning, we understand there was a pause after 23. April 7th, 22, we went to 23. We started off negotiating this from scratch. So there was no work done by the previous administration. So it's disappointing to hear the language, certainly, that MHA, Hutton and Hogan are talking about. And when they talk about transparency is very evident in their approach to all of this. They're probably the most transparent people I've ever seen. Everyone sees right through them. And at the end of the day, this project is far too important, no different than the MOU. It's far too important for us to just allow short-term negotiations and giveaways. So we're working very diligently. My team, the Premier and myself, are working on this day and night, and it's moving forward and it's headed in the right direction. And I'm very positive that there will be a positive outcome from this.
Appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Minister of Mines and Energy, Lloyd Parrott, the PC member for Terra Nova. Let's get a break for the news. When we come back, Ken's in the queue to talk about the fishery. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Ken, you're on the air.
Good day, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad.
Good.
Paddy, I talked to you before. You know who I am. I'm a fourth-generation fisherman. I started off fishing in Labrador, a place called Benson Islands. It was on the south coast of Labrador. We were involved in the salt fish crop and in the salt fishery down there until the moratorium. And the moratorium was mainly caused by offshore trawlers. Everybody seems to think the same. If you listen to land and sea shows, ask the fishermen. And the fishermen are being asked on that what happened to the fishery. When they all say it was draggers out there in the wintertime on the spawning ground. Okay, our government now is letting history repeat itself. Because right now, as I'm talking to you, there's 2 factory freezer offshore trawlers belong to OCI. They're in close to the land now because of the weather. They came in out of the storm. But they're fishing right adjacent to where I fished to before the moratorium. Now, I haven't been down there since 92. I can only see pictures of everything that we build ourselves with no money from government. Houses, wharves, stages, landsways, everything. It's all destroyed, fell down because of lack of use, I suppose. No one down there. Haven't been down there since, but them boats are still allowed. Now, they're allowed to go back there and go fishing. I'm here in this bay, up here in Conception Bay. I got a quota now of 20,000 pounds of fish. I'm allowed to fish now until the 25th of January. Then I got to get another license. How are you supposed to fish here in this weather in a 34-foot boat? Why don't you give me the 20,000 pounds of fish a week in the summer? At least the plants is open to take it. Now, I've mentioned this before. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is there's lots of stuff in the news about FAW and Premier Wakeham. They're talking about crab. Yes, I agree. Crab is very important to a lot of people and this province and the economy and everything else. But there's also, and don't forget, there's other species in the wild. It's important, or it already is just as important as the crab. No one talking about it. Lobsters. Can't get clear of lobsters last summer. Imagine. Others with crates and crates of lobsters here and can't get clear of it. No buyers coming for it. Codfish. Allowed to go out get 3,000 pounds. You can go get that in 4 nits if you wanted to here in a day. And you're only allowed to go out 2 days a week anyway, because the plants can't handle it. So if Tony Wakeham really wants to fix the fishery or even help the fishery, first thing, this is my opinion, what he should do is get clear of Royal Greenland, boot them right out of the country because they were booted out of countries before, and break up that cartel they got started, the 4 or 5, the big 5 they called it, break them up and let them go on their own, separate them, and that'll create... well, they'll be on their own. They'll be competing against one another then, and that all together. And it'll create better prices and everything here for fishermen. And maybe then they'll, if they want more to fish, wants everything for themselves, they'll have to open up some of the plants they got locked up. So that's my beef on all that this morning.
Yeah,
Tony Wakeham better grow a set and make a big statement to get clear of the Royal Greenland and start this over. Because they're the ruination of this province. And the inshore fishery is going to take the hit, and they are taking the hit.
Just a couple of quick questions. I understand your point about getting your quota in the summer months where you can actually fish it safely, or certainly more safe than trying to get it today. And another good point about the plants actually being open. So what are you doing with the cod that you catch now? Where are you selling it?
I can't fish. I got a license. I got a quota to give me. Well, first of all, they give me the conditions. Here you are. You're allowed to fish 20,000 pounds a week. You're allowed to use 24 nits up to this date. That was the 3rd of January. Then I got another set of conditions, which are basically the same, but just a different date. But I had no license to give me the conditions. Now, because of 2026, I got the renewed license for 2026. So I had to amend that. I got that amended. I'm allowed to fish right now till the 25th of January. But boy, what can you do here? Even if the weather was good, there's no plant open to buy it. If I went out there and got 20,000 pounds and come in on the wharf, what would you do with it? Throw it out to the Gulf. That's what I'd have to do with it here.
Yeah, and that's why I asked where you plan on selling it. With Royal Greenland, even when the purchase that they made was approved, even that the processing licensing board, at the time the chair was Ray Janty, he was very clear in saying there needs to be careful consideration of foreign concentration inside the processing sector. So are you suggesting that you think the Premier should force a sale? Because if you force Royal Greenland out and no one takes over their capacity, then we're creating an even bigger problem, aren't we?
No, because Royal Greenland won't let no one else come in here. If they were gone, maybe there would be some more buyers come in here. You're ruling the roost, Royal Greenland. And if the government that allowed them in here in the first place done their homework and investigated them a bit better and know their tactics, what they've been at in other countries, and what they've done with the shrimp, what they were doing with the shrimp, maybe they might have had a different tune before letting them in here.
Yeah, I think we got a processing sector capacity problem right in front of us right this very minute. I haven't heard anything from the province about, expanding the number of licenses out there, especially for the smaller players closer by where people are fishing. Because with that plant in St. Mary's burnt down, we had a capacity problem last year. So while they were still going at the crab and the cod season open, people weren't able to get their cod sold to the plants because they were still at the crab. So it's only going to get worse this year as far as I can tell.
Yes, you're 100% right. We talked about that last time I was talking to you. We got a capacity problem, yes, a big problem. And now worse because St. Mary's, like you said. But that's not going to change if we don't get clear of this cartel. If you break up that cartel, it'll create competition. There's no competition when they're all under the one roof. Years ago, when we were in Labrador, there was 3 merchants that I can remember were buying saltfish. And 3 of them were from here in this bay. The Earl's here in Carbonear, Hiscock's up the bay, Brigham somewhere, and Dawes, 3 big ones. But they done exactly the same thing. They combined and called themselves the Saltfish Corporation, eliminating no more competition. They had the whole Labrador fishery, and they could buy all the cod down there for whatever price they decided they want to pay for it. The same thing happened. Cartel down there, and now this is a bigger story up here.
I appreciate the time this morning, Ken. Sorry.
If they don't stop it, we'll never be any better. So Tony Wakeham can do what Dwan Street wants and them 4 demands that she given. Ain't going to change one thing for me or the rest of the people that's got nothing to do with crab.
Fair ball. The
That's
crab
not going to help the crab fishermen very much either.
Yeah, no, crab does get the lion's share of the conversation. No doubt about that.
Yeah, I do, yeah. But one of these days they'll be sorry for that because the crab fishery will fail.
Well, certainly hope not. As much, it gets a lot of attention, I suppose, because it's just so lucrative. But that's not to say that there's not a lot of other species out there that many harvesters are reliant on for their annual earnings. I totally get the point, Ken.
Well, you asked the lobster fishermen on the west coast what they think about crab.
Yeah, I've heard. No doubt about that.
Yeah. So, okay, Paddy, thank you very much.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, thanks.
Bye. And it's also, with the lobster fishermen, we've heard from a couple of them, and they say that in specifics regarding market for their product, which is now another pretty significant market, has now been reopened in China. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. I think a NAPE member just sent this along, and it's about the story in the news today about some 80 jobs that may be impacted in some form or fashion when we talk about medical transcription services. So now the government has moved off to using artificial intelligence to do that exact job. Now, at this point, none of the 80 have been told that they're laid off, but we still don't know what their next or new job is going to be and where it's going to be. So plenty of consternation amongst that group of 80. And I would imagine the umbrella organization that is NAPE itself. I think people thought it was, exaggerations and hyperbole if we're saying that, AI is coming for your job. In some corners, it is. Now, there's going to be jobs created by artificial intelligence, but nowhere near the numbers that are going to be deleted as a result of. So I don't know the answer to what's going to happen to all of these people who are doing the medical transcription services, but the whole use of artificial intelligence inside government is yet to be fully understood. I mean, you've heard my position on it for everyday use. I think it's going to be a huge problem. But those jobs, especially inside of government and in the private sector, there is valid questions about what that's going to mean for jobs into the future. No doubt about it. In addition to that, and this is a note I got overnight from a person who says that they're a high school teacher. And the name could have been a man or woman. I'm not really sure, but that's irrelevant. They were talking about comments I've made about artificial intelligence use inside the K-12 system, and I guess inside the post-secondary system as well. This person estimates, and they did this on purpose, put forward an assignment to their students to produce some sort of report. And they did. And he has this AI identification tool that he uses, and even just by recognizing the text that was submitted, he's thinking that somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the students use a large language model like ChatGPT to produce their schoolwork. That's going to be the case into the future as well. So how we wrap our minds around that in the classrooms is going to be a big deal. I mean, if you use, say for instance, ChatGPT to produce the work for you, then if you read the stories coming from think tanks like the Media Lab at MIT, which I think is a pretty reputable organization, they used 3 different test groups, and this was in an effort to produce an essay for the SATs. One used just Google, one used a large language model like ChatGPT, and the other just used their brain. The outcome was clear. The folks that used ChatGPT had very little likelihood or opportunity to regurgitate their work. And when further questioned about some of the content of their work, were struggling mightily to come up with any sort of coherent answer to the instructors. Compare that to the group that did it of their own accord, through their own research and their own critical thinking and their own application. They were much better informed about what they produced. It just makes sense. So when we talk about academic outcomes into the future, we can only hope that the Department of Education, individual teachers, individual schools come up with some sort of way to ensure that, yes, you can use the ChatGPT as a jumping off point to get some suggestions about how you should proceed to try to produce the work, whatever assignment we're talking about in school, but it doesn't seem to be the case at this point. I think it's a fair assumption that for the folks, those children, those young people in high school, and I believe it was grade 11, if they were asked about what they learned from this particular assignment, and the outcome for 75% is they learned very little to nothing, boy, oh boy, that's going to be a problem next year when they're supposed to have learned that type of grade 11 information to move on to the next layer of learning in grade 12, or level 3 as they call it, I guess, today. So I think we've got a long way to go to figure this out. In addition to that, So I had a back and forth going with someone yesterday, and I'll leave the topic out of it because it's kind of tedious. And they were trying to send me what they called proof of their side of the debate. The problem was, what eventually got sent along was gibberish. I mean, it had text, and it had a still shot and a very, very short video. And you could tell crystal clear that some of the content that was shared with me was generated by AI. But that person was using that as the basis for their argument. So we're going to see it more and more. And I don't know how we're going to combat it. It's one thing to talk about, legislative understanding, how government employs it, but for the individual and public discourse, man, oh man. And this person had bought it hook, line, and sinker. It was absolutely demonstrably false what he was latched onto, and it was the core basis of his argument. And it's not for me to get into arguments with individuals about whatever their mind is set on, but I think it's a clear case study as to how we're going to really struggle into the future, especially when we talk about political discourse, which is already pretty gross for the most part. But if and when opinions are going to be formed and people are going to be unwavering in their opinion, but the opinion is based on something that's not even real, man, how are we going to combat that? Because even when people go back to their own corners politically and will never come out, for the vast majority of people at this moment in time, in this country, less so than the United States, but once they draw those battle lines, they're not lines in the sand. They're chiseled with jackhammers into the concrete, and people are just not willing to budge a smidge, even when presented with facts that really do prove a different view. Because we're not talking about opinions, we're talking about the exchange and the debate over factually what's happening. Anyway, I have been asked if I'm going to watch the president's speech that happened in Davos. I think it's over now, is it, Dave? Yeah, it's over at this point. Short answer is maybe. How long was it, Dave? Do you happen to know? 15, 20 minutes? It was an hour. So, yeah, I'll probably be a headline guy. Maybe watch a little tiny bit of it. But anyway, getting plenty of reaction to the Prime Minister's speech. And I do have a basic question for the folks who are talking about New World Order and globalization and stuff, and the concept of having cozied up to China. What exactly do people mean by that? Because I'm not entirely sure. I mean, have we actually cozied up to anybody? It doesn't really feel like it. I mean, the world trades with China. I mean, put it this way. Apparently, it's a very partisan issue. But when two of the people right out of the gate were applauding what had happened in China, if their Conservative Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan and Conservative Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta, then I'm not sure what to tell you. I mean, many of the people they represent, whether it be in the oil and gas industry in Alberta and opening up more market in China, who's now the number one offtake of the oil that goes through the Trans Mountain pipelines. So Danielle Smith's quite pleased with it. Same thing with Scott Moe. So, and a lot of the farmland there producing the canola that they were having a hard time selling to other markets because China, the number one importer of canola, and Saskatchewan, the number one exporter. As a country, Canada is the largest exporter in the world. So we can have and share all of the obvious concerns with Chinese operations in this country, of course. And we'd be fooled to turn our backs on it. So whether it be elections, whether it be business, whether it be with social discourse, whether it be with these Chinese police stations, which I still can't believe is an actual thing, but they are, and the way they treat Chinese diaspora is a concern. There's no doubt about it. Also get plenty of questions about the status of the Memorandum of Understanding signed between the federal government and the province of Alberta regarding pipelines. I suppose we won't know much more about how that conversation looks until someone comes forward and proposes an actual pipeline. Because right now, it's just kind of mythical. So it's hard to say that, no private sector is going to come forward because of regulatory uncertainties and all the rest of it. I mean, it looks like the feds are willing to work with the Alberta government if and when there's an actual proposal. We're told by Albertans that there's a proposal coming soon, but it very much feels like a taxpayer-funded pipeline. The conversation into the future about the actual business model associated with what would have to be tens of billions of dollars to build another pipeline, even if you put another pipeline along the exact same route as the twinning of the Trans Mountain pipeline, it'd be pretty curious to see if there's anybody going to come forward and make that actual proposal. Because when you just talk about MOUs of hypotheticals, it's hard to have any real debate on that front. Anyway, let's check in on the Twitter before we run out of time. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.